Seat 23B smelled like recycled air and the stale perfume of whoever had flown this route before me. I pressed my forehead against the oval window, watching Chicago's skyline shrink beneath us as Flight 2847 climbed into afternoon clouds. 3 days of pediatric conferences had left my mind oversaturated with data about infant development milestones and my body craving sleep that wouldn't come on this cramped flight back to Boston. The crying started 20 minutes after takeoff. At first, it was just background noise, the kind every frequent flyer learns to tune out. But this wasn't the typical fussy baby sound. This was distress, raw and escalating, the kind that made my professional instincts kick in before my exhausted brain could tell them to rest. I straightened in my seat, craning my neck to see past the curtain separating economy from first class. "Ma'am, please remain seated. We're still experiencing turbulence." The flight attendant's voice was polite but firm as she passed my row. I sank back, fingers drumming against the armrest. The crying continued, climbing in pitch and desperation. 30 minutes became 40. Passengers around me shifted uncomfortably, some pressing earbuds deeper, others shooting annoyed glances toward the front of the aircraft. But I couldn't stop listening, couldn't stop analyzing the pattern. The cry had a specific quality, rhythmic and intense, with the kind of full-body tension that spoke of genuine pain rather than simple discomfort. Colic. Severe, by the sound of it. When the seatbelt sign finally chimed off, I unbuckled before fully deciding to get involved. My legs carried me up the aisle while my rational mind listed all the reasons this was none of my business. I'd just spent 72 hours discussing complex cases with colleagues from across the country. I was off duty. This wasn't my patient, my problem, my responsibility. The flight attendant near the galley looked ready to intercept me, but I held up my conference badge still clipped to my canvas bag. "I'm a pediatrician. That baby sounds like it might need medical assessment." Her professional smile cracked slightly, relief bleeding through. "The passenger has refused assistance multiple times, but you're welcome to try." She pulled back the curtain, and I got my first clear view. First class held maybe a dozen seats, most occupied by business travelers studiously ignoring the chaos unfolding in row 2. The man holding the screaming infant looked like he'd been through a war. His white dress shirt was wrinkled beyond salvation, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and even from several feet away, I could see the exhaustion carved into his face. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Dark brown, almost black, and filled with a desperation so raw it made my chest tighten. "Sir?" I approached slowly, keeping my voice gentle. "I'm Dr. Foster. I couldn't help but hear your baby crying. Would you mind if I took a look?" His gaze snapped to mine, and the intensity in it nearly made me step back. For a long moment, he just stared, as if trying to determine whether I was real or a hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation. The baby, maybe 8 or 9 months old, wailed against his shoulder, little fists clenched, face red with effort. "You're a doctor?" His voice was low, roughened by hours of stress, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or something close to it. Pediatrician, actually, specialized in infant development. I gestured to the conference badge. Just spent 3 days talking about exactly this kind of thing. Something shifted in his expression. A crack in whatever wall he'd built around himself. "Please." The single word carried the weight of absolute defeat, of a man who'd tried everything and failed. I slid into the empty seat beside him, already assessing the baby with practiced eyes. Boy, approximately 9 months, well-nourished but clearly in distress. The cry pattern, the way he pulled his legs up to his belly, the flush spreading down his neck, all pointed to one thing. "May I?" I held out my hands, and after a heartbeat of hesitation, he transferred the baby to me. The child's body was rigid with tension, back arching, abdomen distended and hard beneath my gentle palpation. "What's his name?" "Noah." "Hi, Noah." I adjusted his position, turning him onto his left side across my forearm, his belly against my palm. My other hand moved in slow, deliberate circles across his back. "How long has he been crying like this?" "Since we boarded. Almost an hour now." The man's voice cracked slightly. "The flight attendants tried everything. Bottle, pacifier, walking. Nothing works. Does he have episodes like this often? I continued the gentle massage, feeling the tightness in Noah's small body begin to shift. Every few days, sometimes worse. He scrubbed a hand across his face, and I noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the kind that cost more than my monthly rent. The pediatrician said colic, but I thought he was supposed to grow out of it by now. Colic typically peaks around 6 weeks and resolves by 4 months, I said, adjusting Noah's position slightly and applying gentle pressure to his lower abdomen. But some babies have extended cases, especially if there's an underlying issue like food sensitivity. The baby's crying had already begun to quiet, shifting from desperate wails to hiccuping whimpers. I continued the massage, adding a subtle rocking motion, and felt the moment his rigid muscles finally released. A small, unmistakable sound of gas passing, and Noah's cry cut off abruptly, replaced by a surprised silence. "What did you do?" The man leaned forward, wonder replacing exhaustion in his expression. Infant massage technique combined with proper positioning helps release trapped gas that's causing the pain. I shifted Noah to an upright position against my shoulder, supporting his head, and patted his back gently until a satisfying burp emerged. "There we go, buddy. That's better, isn't it?" Noah made a soft cooing sound, his tiny fist grabbing at my shirt. The tension had completely drained from his body, leaving him relaxed and drowsy against me. I looked up to find his father staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between gratitude and something else. Something more intense. "I don't understand. How did you fix him in 2 minutes when nothing else worked?" "I didn't fix him. This is temporary relief, not a cure." I reluctantly handed Noah back, noting how the man's entire demeanor shifted the moment he held his son again, becoming both more protective and more vulnerable simultaneously. "If he's having episodes this frequently at 9 months, you need to investigate further. Food allergies are common culprits. What formula are you using?" He told me, and I nodded, filing the information away. "That's cow's milk based. Noah might have a sensitivity to the protein. You should talk to his pediatrician about switching to a hypoallergenic formula and eliminating dairy from his diet if you're supplementing with any solid foods. I'll call tomorrow." He looked down at Noah, who was already drifting toward sleep, tiny fingers curled against his father's chest. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you properly. You just did." I started to stand, but his hand caught my wrist gently. "Please, let me compensate you for your time." He reached for his wallet with his free hand, but I pulled away. "I don't accept payment for helping a baby in distress. That's not who I am." I softened the refusal with a slight smile. "Just promise you'll follow up with his doctor. If the formula change doesn't help within a week, push for an allergy panel and possibly a gastroenterologist referral." "I will." He studied me with those intense dark eyes, and I felt oddly exposed, as if he could see straight through to something I hadn't meant to reveal. "You're very good at this." "It's what I do." I gestured to the now peaceful Noah. "Get some rest while he's sleeping. And try the massage technique I showed you next time he has an episode. Clockwise circles on the belly, gentle but firm pressure, left side lying position to help the gas move through." The plane jolted slightly, hitting a pocket of turbulence, and I grabbed the seat back to steady myself. I should get back to my seat before we hit more rough air. "What's your name?" The question was direct, almost urgent. "Your full name, Dr. Foster." "Rachel Foster." I glanced at the conference badge still hanging from my bag, realizing he could probably read it anyway. "I work at Boston General, Pediatric Department." Something flickered in his expression. Satisfaction, maybe, as if I'd just given him something valuable. "Vincent Castrovani." "Thank you, Rachel Foster. You saved me today. Possibly saved my sanity." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it suggested it should. I offered a small wave to Noah, who was now fully asleep, and made my way back through the curtain to economy. My seat felt even more cramped than before, but I couldn't quite shake the feeling of Vincent's eyes following me. The weight of his gratitude mixed with something else I couldn't name. The landing was smooth. We touched down at Logan just after 7, and I was through the terminal and into a rideshare before the first-class passengers even finished gathering their belongings. My tiny apartment in Dorchester waited, along with 12 hours of blessed sleep before my next shift. I didn't look back. Didn't think I'd ever see Vincent Castrovani or his son Noah again. Just another random encounter. One of those brief connections that happen between strangers and dissolve the moment they part ways. I had no way of knowing that 3 days later, he would walk into my hospital with deliberate purpose. That he'd already learned everything about me, from my work history to my home address. That the moment I'd touched his son, I'd stepped into a world far more dangerous than anything I could have imagined from my window seat in row 23B. Tuesday afternoon's shift at Boston General was the usual controlled chaos. I'd just finished explaining hydrocephalus treatment options to anxious parents when my pager buzzed with a new patient intake in exam room 4. The chart notation was sparse. Castrovani, Noah, 9 months. Follow-up for colic and feeding concerns. Requested Dr. Foster specifically. My steps faltered in the hallway. Castrovani. The name from the airplane. The exhausted father with the screaming baby who'd looked at me like I'd performed a miracle with nothing but my hands and some basic pediatric knowledge. But how would he even know I worked here? I'd mentioned Boston General during our conversation, but finding one specific doctor in a city this size should have taken more than casual effort. I pushed open the exam room door, and there he was. Vincent Castrovani looked different than he had on the plane. The wrinkled desperation had been replaced by composed control. His charcoal suit fit perfectly, clearly custom-made, and his dark hair was styled with deliberate precision. But those eyes, deep brown, almost black, held the same intensity I remembered. They tracked my entrance with laser focus, and something about the attention made my skin prickle with awareness. Noah sat on his lap, looking significantly better than during our flight. The baby's cheeks had color now, his eyes bright and curious as he gnawed on a rubber giraffe toy. Dr. Foster. Vincent stood, and the movement was fluid, controlled. Thank you for seeing us. Mr. Castrovani. I kept my tone professional, moving to wash my hands at the small sink. I have to admit, I'm surprised to see you here. How did you find me? You mentioned where you worked. His response was smooth, but didn't quite answer the question of how he'd requested me specifically from among dozens of pediatricians. Noah improved after the flight, but the episodes came back 2 days later. You were right about needing further investigation. I dried my hands and approached, letting Noah grab my finger with his tiny fist. His grip was strong, healthy. Tell me about the episodes since we last spoke. Frequency, duration, what seems to trigger them. Vincent described the pattern with remarkable detail for a father, noting times, Noah's reactions to different foods, sleep disturbances. As he spoke, I became aware of movement in the hallway outside. Through the small window in the door, I caught glimpses of men in dark suits positioned with unusual deliberation. Not medical staff, not other patients' families, security, private security. Mr. Castrovani, who are those men in the hallway? His expression didn't change. Precautionary measures. I have business interests that require certain protections. The phrasing was careful, revealing nothing while confirming everything. This man operated in a world where bodyguards were normal, where threats were constant enough to require armed personnel in a hospital pediatric ward. I should have been more cautious, should have excused myself and requested one of my colleagues take this case. Instead, I found myself more intrigued than frightened. I see. I turned my attention to Noah, conducting a thorough examination. Abdomen still tender in the lower quadrants, but the rigid tension from the flight was absent. Has he had any rashes? Diarrhea? Blood in his stool? No blood. Some diarrhea, greenish color. Small rash on his back that comes and goes. I nodded, pieces clicking together. I suspect he has a cow's milk protein allergy in addition to the colic. It's relatively common, but often missed because the symptoms overlap. The formula you mentioned on the plane contains dairy proteins that his system can't process properly. Vincent leaned forward slightly, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and spice. How do we fix it? Switch to a hypoallergenic formula, the kind where the proteins are broken down into smaller components his body won't react to. Within a week, you should see significant improvement. I pulled out my prescription pad, writing down specific brands and dosages. But the transition needs to be monitored carefully. Babies can be sensitive to formula changes. Then monitor it. His voice dropped lower, taking on a quality that suggested he was accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. "I'd like to hire you as Noah's private pediatrician. Full-time basis. Whatever your current salary is, I'll triple it." I set down my pen slowly. "Mr. Castrovani, I appreciate the offer, but I don't do private practice. My work here at the hospital serves families who can't afford specialized care. That matters to me." "Name your price." "It's not about money." "Everything is about money, Dr. Foster." He shifted Noah to his other arm, and the baby reached for him with complete trust. The gesture softened something in Vincent's face, a crack in the armor. "My son needs someone who understands his condition. Someone who can help him without making him suffer through trial and error with doctors who spend 10 minutes per appointment. You helped him in 2 minutes on an airplane. Imagine what you could do with proper time and resources." The argument was compelling, but something about the situation felt dangerous in ways I couldn't articulate. "I'll make you a counteroffer. Let me come to your home, do a complete assessment of Noah's environment, diet, routine. One comprehensive consultation where I can give you a detailed care plan. After that, you work with your regular pediatrician to implement it." Vincent considered this, his gaze never leaving my face. The scrutiny should have been uncomfortable, but instead felt strangely intimate, like he was cataloging every detail for later reference. "Fine, but the consultation happens at my residence where Noah is comfortable and where I can ensure privacy." Privacy. Another careful word choice that suggested this man's life involved things that needed to be hidden from public view. Against every ounce of common sense, I agreed. "When?" "Tonight. I don't finish my shift until 7. I'll send a car at 7:15. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, the cardstock thick and expensive. "Only a name and phone number. No company, no title. Call this number when you're ready. The driver will bring you to my property." Property. Not home, not house. Property. I took the card, feeling the weight of the decision settling over me like a physical thing. "Just the consultation, Mr. Castrovani?" "Nothing more." "Of course, Dr. Foster." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. "Nothing more." The black Mercedes that picked me up at 7:20 was immaculate, the driver silent and professional. We drove north from the city for 40 minutes, winding through increasingly affluent neighborhoods until we turned onto a private road flanked by iron gates that opened automatically. The estate beyond was stunning, a modern architectural masterpiece of glass and stone set on what had to be at least 10 acres of manicured grounds. "Jesus," I muttered, pressing my face closer to the window. This wasn't wealth. This was dynasty-level money. The car stopped under a covered portico, where Vincent waited, Noah in his arms. He'd changed from the suit into dark slacks and a white shirt with rolled sleeves, looking simultaneously more relaxed and somehow more dangerous. 3 men in suits flanked the entrance, their positions strategic, their attention constantly scanning. "Dr. Foster." He descended the steps as my door opened. "Welcome." The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, original artwork that probably cost more than my medical school debt, furniture that whispered Italian craftsmanship. But what struck me most was how lived in it felt despite the obvious wealth. Baby toys scattered near a designer sofa, a bottle warmer on a marble console table. The juxtaposition of domestic life within this fortress. Vincent led me to a nursery that belonged in a magazine spread. State-of-the-art baby monitor system, hypoallergenic everything, temperature control that probably cost more than my car. I spent 90 minutes conducting the most thorough pediatric assessment of my career, while Vincent watched from a nearby chair, answering every question with precision, occasionally adding observations that showed how carefully he monitored his son's every detail. "You're right about the allergy," I concluded, making notes on my tablet. "We need to transition him to this specific formula over the next 5 days, gradually mixing it with his current one to avoid digestive shock. I'd also recommend eliminating all dairy from any solid foods, starting a probiotic supplement, and keeping a detailed food diary. 5 days. Vincent stood, moving to stand beside me. Up close, I could see he was taller than I'd registered before, at least 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested regular physical training. "You should stay. Monitor the transition yourself. Mr. Castrovani." "Vincent, please." The intimacy of the request made my breath catch. Vincent, I can write extremely detailed instructions for your nanny or whoever helps with Noah's care. I don't have a nanny. I have household staff. But I take care of Noah myself. He paused, and something vulnerable crossed his expression. His mother died giving birth to him. Complications that no one anticipated. Choices that had to be made in seconds. For 10 months, it's been just us. The revelation hit me harder than it should have. This powerful, intimidating man was a widower raising his infant son alone, fumbling through parenthood while running whatever empire required armed guards and fortress-like estates. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said quietly. "But that doesn't change the fact that I have a job, responsibilities. 3 weeks. I'll pay you $75,000. That's more than enough to eliminate your student loans completely." He said it casually, as if that amount of money was insignificant. "You work exclusively with Noah, monitoring every aspect of his transition, making sure he's truly healthy. After that, we part ways, and you go back to saving the world one patient at a time. $75,000. Freedom from the debt that had been crushing me since medical school. The monthly payments that forced me to pick up extra shifts and live in a barely furnished apartment in one of Boston's cheaper neighborhoods. It was tempting, dangerously so. 2 weeks, I countered. And I keep my hospital shifts, at least part-time. I have patients there who depend on me. 2 weeks, but you stay here on the property. Noah needs someone available at night when the colic is worst. Bringing you back and forth through the city daily is impractical and frankly unnecessarily risky." "Risky how?" His jaw tightened slightly. "I have rivals in my business ventures. People who would exploit any perceived weakness. The men you saw at the hospital, the security here, it's all necessary. Having you travel repeatedly between locations creates exposure points that are better avoided." The explanation made tactical sense, but something about it felt incomplete, like he was telling me just enough truth to be convincing while omitting crucial context. Still, the offer was compelling, and Noah deserved the best possible care during this transition. Fine. 2 weeks. Full-time residence here. But I want it in writing, including the payment terms. I met his eyes directly, refusing to be intimidated. And if at any point I feel uncomfortable or unsafe, I leave immediately with no penalties. Vincent extended his hand. Agreed. His palm was warm against mine, the grip firm but not crushing. The handshake lasted a second too long, his thumb brushing against my wrist in a way that sent an unexpected spark of electricity up my arm. I pulled back quickly, suddenly very aware that I'd just agreed to move into a stranger's home. A stranger whose world included armed security and careful euphemisms about rivals and risks. "I'll need to go home and pack some things," I said, trying to regain professional distance, "and arrange coverage for my shifts. The car will take you now and bring you back tonight. I'll have the contract ready for you to review when you return." Vincent shifted Noah to his shoulder, and the baby made a contented sound, tiny fingers curling into his father's collar. "Thank you, Dr. Foster. You're giving my son a chance at real health. That's worth more than money." As the Mercedes carried me back toward my apartment, I stared at Vincent's business card, running my thumb over the embossed lettering. I'd made my choice, signed onto something I didn't fully understand, all because a baby had cried on an airplane, and I couldn't walk away from helping him. I had no idea I'd just stepped into a world where help and danger were two sides of the same coin, or that the man who'd hired me was already planning how to keep me long after our 2 weeks ended. My guest suite was larger than my entire apartment in Dorchester. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. The bathroom had heated floors, a rainfall shower, and toiletries that cost more per bottle than I typically spent on groceries in a week. Everything screamed wealth so profound it had stopped trying to impress anyone. I unpacked my single suitcase, feeling oddly out of place among such luxury. 2 weeks. $75,000. Then back to my real life. The first morning, I woke at 6 to find Vincent already in Noah's nursery, changing a diaper with the focused concentration of someone who taught himself through YouTube videos and desperation. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering across his face. "You're up early. Pediatricians don't sleep in. Babies certainly don't." I moved to the changing table, observing his technique. "You're doing it wrong." The tabs need to be tighter or he'll leak through in an hour. Vincent stepped back without argument, watching as I demonstrated the proper method. Noah gurgled happily, tiny legs kicking. I've been doing it wrong for 10 months? Probably, but he's still alive and healthy, so you're doing fine overall. I finished fastening the fresh diaper and picked Noah up, pressing my nose to his belly until he giggled. Ready to start your new formula, little man? The transition went smoother than anticipated. I'd created a detailed schedule, mixing ratios that decreased the old formula by 20% each day, while increasing the hypoallergenic replacement. By day 3, Noah's digestive system had noticeably improved. The desperate crying episodes stopped completely. He slept longer stretches, woke up happier, gained weight at a healthy rate. But observing Noah's medical progress was only part of what I learned that first week. The Castrovani household operated with military precision beneath its domestic surface. Staff moved through the mansion on predictable schedules, always professional, always aware of Vincent's location. The chef prepared meals that appeared at exact times without anyone seeming to request them. Laundry vanished and reappeared clean and pressed. It was like living in a 5-star hotel where the machinery was invisible, except for the men with guns. They were everywhere once I started noticing. Not obviously threatening, not drawing attention to themselves, but present. 2 stationed at the main entrance, one patrolling the grounds visible through the western windows, another positioned near the garage. They wore suits like Vincent's, but moved differently, with the controlled awareness of trained soldiers. On the 3rd day, I watched from the nursery window as 3 black SUVs arrived in formation. Men emerged, greeted each other with familiar efficiency, and disappeared into Vincent's study. The meeting lasted 4 hours. When they left, Vincent looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "Business associates?" I asked that evening when we happened to be in the kitchen simultaneously. I was preparing Noah's evening bottle. Vincent was pouring whiskey from a crystal decanter. Something like that. He took a long drink, then seemed to reconsider his evasiveness. Allies, more accurately. The people I work with to maintain certain territorial understandings. Territorial. The word choice was deliberate, almost territorial in the animal sense rather than corporate. What kind of business requires territorial understandings and armed security? The kind that's kept my family powerful for 3 generations. He set down his glass, dark eyes meeting mine with that unsettling intensity. The kind you're better off not knowing details about, Dr. Foster. "Rachel, if I'm living in your house taking care of your son, you should probably use my first name. Rachel." He said it slowly, as if testing how it felt. Fair enough. I should have pressed for more information, should have demanded clarity about what exactly I'd stepped into. Instead, I focused on Noah, told myself that whatever Vincent did for a living was none of my business, as long as the baby was safe and healthy. That willful ignorance lasted until the 4th night. I'd developed a routine of reading in the sitting room attached to my suite after Noah's final feeding. Medical journals, mostly, trying to keep up with new pediatric research. Vincent had passed by twice, both times slowing as if considering whether to interrupt, then continuing to wherever he spent his late evenings. The 3rd time, he stopped in the doorway. "May I come in? It's your house, but it's your space while you're here. I don't want to intrude." He waited for my nod before entering, carrying his own book, a worn paperback that looked like it had been read multiple times. "I find it difficult to sleep lately. Thought I might read here if that's acceptable." We sat in companionable silence for nearly an hour, the only sounds turning pages and the occasional distant noise from elsewhere in the mansion. It felt strangely domestic, this quiet evening with a man I barely knew but somehow felt comfortable beside. "Can I ask you something?" I closed my journal. "Noah's mother. What was her name?" Vincent's jaw tightened, but he answered. "Sophia. We'd been married 6 years when she got pregnant. The doctors said she had a placental abruption during labor. Massive hemorrhaging. They gave me a choice." His voice went flat, emotionless in the way people get when discussing trauma too painful to feel fully. "Save her or save Noah. Not both. Vincent, I'm sorry. She made the choice for me. Had it written in her birth plan. Witnessed by her lawyer. If complications arose, save the baby. I held her hand while she bled out, knowing I was letting her die because she'd told me to. He looked at me then, and the raw grief in his expression made my throat tight. So yes, I'm perhaps too protective of him. He cost me everything I had. He has to be worth it. I crossed the space between us without thinking, sitting beside him on the leather sofa. He is worth it. And she knew that when she made her choice. You're not letting her down by struggling, Vincent. You're honoring her by keeping him alive and healthy, despite how hard it is. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining with surprising gentleness. Thank you for saying that. We stayed that way for longer than was probably appropriate. Hands clasped, both lost in our own thoughts about loss and survival. When I finally went to bed, my palm still tingled where his skin had touched mine. The shooting started at 2:17 a.m. I woke to the sound of car engines, raised voices, then the unmistakable crack of gunfire. My body reacted before my mind fully processed the danger, throwing off covers, running barefoot into the hallway. Noah's nursery. I had to get to Noah. Vincent was already there, scooping the crying baby from his crib with practiced speed. Come with me. Now. What's happening? No time. Move. His voice carried absolute authority, the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed in crisis situations. He led us down the hallway to what I'd assumed was a linen closet. Instead, when he pressed his palm to a hidden scanner, the back wall slid open to reveal a reinforced room roughly 12 feet square. Emergency supplies lined metal shelves, communication equipment blinked on a small desk, and the walls were thick enough to muffle the ongoing sounds of violence outside. A panic room. Of course this house had a panic room. Vincent handed me Noah, who was screaming in terror, then moved to the communication equipment. He spoke rapid Italian into a headset, his calm at odds with the chaos evident in whatever responses he was receiving. I sank onto the padded bench running along one wall, holding Noah close, making soothing sounds I didn't feel. The shooting lasted maybe 5 minutes, though it felt like hours. Then silence, more frightening than the noise had been. What if Vincent's security had lost? What if whoever attacked was now searching the house? Vincent finished his communication and sat beside us, taking Noah from my arms. The baby immediately calmed slightly, recognizing his father's scent and touch. It's over. They didn't breach the perimeter. My voice shook, despite efforts to control it. Who attacked us? A rival organization. We've been in conflict over territorial control of certain business operations along the East Coast. He rubbed Noah's back in slow circles, the movement automatic. They've been testing our defenses for weeks, looking for weaknesses. This was more aggressive than previous attempts. Testing your defenses. I repeated the words, trying to process them. Vincent, what exactly do you do? He looked at me for a long moment, clearly weighing how much truth to offer. My family controls significant interests in this region. Import-export operations, real estate holdings, entertainment venues, security services. Some of our business dealings exist in gray areas legally. The people we compete against don't believe in competition. They believe in elimination. Gray areas. Elimination. The euphemisms couldn't quite hide what he was describing. You're telling me you're in organized crime. I'm telling you, I inherited a legacy 3 generations old that provides for hundreds of families, that operates according to codes and rules that predate modern law enforcement, and that, yes, sometimes requires violence to maintain. His voice remained steady, factual. The men who attacked tonight? Albanian Mafia expanding into territory they have no claim to. If I show weakness, if I fail to defend what's mine, they'll take everything. My businesses, my properties, my life. Noah had fallen back asleep against Vincent's shoulder, exhausted by fear. I watched them together, this powerful, dangerous man and his innocent son, and felt something shift in my understanding. You should have told me before I agreed to stay here. Would you have stayed if I had? Honestly, I didn't know. Why did you really want me here, Vincent? Noah's doing fine now. You could hire any pediatrician to monitor his transition. Because keeping you in hospitals or traveling through the city makes you vulnerable. He met my eyes directly. Because my enemies have already started investigating anyone I show interest in, anyone who might matter to me. Because bringing you here, where I have complete control of security, was the only way I could be certain you'd be safe while Noah needed you. The admission hung between us, loaded with implications. I matter to you. You helped my son when no one else could. You showed up in my life exactly when I needed you most. Whether that's fate or coincidence, I don't intend to waste it. He shifted Noah to his other shoulder. You can leave tomorrow if you want. I'll pay you what I promised regardless. But Rachel, if you stay, you need to understand what that means. You'll be under my protection, yes, but also under my enemy's scrutiny. They'll see you as connected to me, potentially as leverage against me. I should have left. Every rational thought screamed that staying in this house, near this man, in this dangerous world was insane. But I looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully now, and remembered Vincent's raw grief talking about Sophia, remembered his gentleness teaching himself to be a father despite having no preparation, remembered the way his hand had felt holding mine earlier that evening. I'll stay. The decision surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise him. 2 weeks. As agreed. But I want the truth from now on, Vincent. No more euphemisms or careful evasions. If I'm at risk, I deserve to know exactly what I'm facing. Relief flooded his expression, quickly masked but visible for a heartbeat. Agreed. And Rachel? Thank you. For protecting Noah tonight. For not running when the shooting started. Where else would I go? He needed me. I stood, suddenly exhausted. Are we safe to leave the panic room now? Luca will come get us when the property is secure and the perimeter reset. He leaned back against the reinforced wall. Noah still asleep against him. Might be a while. So we waited. This unlikely trio in a hidden fortress within a fortress, while outside Vincent's men cleaned up whatever aftermath violent men left behind. And somewhere in that strange, suspended time, I stopped thinking of this arrangement as temporary employment and started recognizing it for what it really was. The beginning of something that would change everything about my carefully constructed, safely predictable life. Noah's transformation was remarkable. By day 10, he was sleeping through the night, gaining weight steadily, and developing at the pace a 9-month-old should. The desperate crying had become a distant memory, replaced by babbling attempts at communication and genuine smiles that lit up his entire face. Medically speaking, my job was complete, so why was I still here? The question nagged at me as I watched Vincent feed Noah breakfast on the 11th morning. He'd mastered the technique now, anticipating when the baby would turn his head or spit out bites he didn't like. The easy competence of his movements spoke to how far he'd come from that desperate father on the airplane. His weight gain is excellent, I said, reviewing the charts I'd been keeping. Formula transition is complete. Digestive system has stabilized. Developmentally, he's right where he should be. Vincent looked up from wiping pureed sweet potato off Noah's chin. But nothing. He's healthy, Vincent. You don't need a live-in pediatrician anymore. Something flickered in his expression, there and gone too quickly to identify. The 2 weeks aren't up yet. You agreed to stay the full duration. I agreed to monitor his transition. The transition is done. Then stay for me. The words came out quiet, almost vulnerable. These past 10 days have been the first time since Sophia died that this house has felt like a home instead of a mausoleum. Noah laughs now. You taught me how to make him laugh. I don't want that to end. The admission caught me off guard. Vincent, finish the 2 weeks, please. I'm not ready to go back to doing this alone. I should have insisted on leaving. Should have recognized that staying beyond medical necessity crossed professional boundaries I'd built my career respecting. Instead, I heard myself agreeing, telling myself it was just a few more days, that helping this family find stability was the compassionate choice. That night, Vincent knocked on my suite door around 10. I made coffee. Thought you might want some while you read. It became our routine. Evenings in my sitting room, both reading, occasionally commenting on something interesting, mostly existing in comfortable silence. On the 12th night, he asked about my parents. House fire, I said, the word still difficult 5 years later. Electrical fault in the wiring. They were asleep when it started. By the time neighbors called it in, there wasn't anything firefighters could do except contain the spread. Were you close? Very. My father was a literature professor. My mother taught elementary school. They were those rare people who genuinely liked each other even after 30 years of marriage. I traced the edge of my book cover. I was in my final year of medical school when it happened. Spent 6 months barely functional, just going through motions. My advisor wanted me to take a leave of absence, but staying busy was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. Vincent set down his drink. That's why you work so hard. Why you took extra shifts at the hospital, even though you were exhausted. You're running from the quiet. The observation was too accurate to deny. Maybe. Or maybe I just want to help people because I couldn't help them. You can't save everyone, Rachel. I know, but I can try to save the ones in front of me. I met his eyes. Like Noah, like you, in a way. You were drowning that day on the plane. I threw you a lifeline because that's what I do, and now I'm pulling you into water you don't know how to navigate. He moved from his chair to sit beside me on the sofa, the proximity sending my pulse racing. I should let you go, should send you back to your safe, predictable life before my world destroys you. I'm not as fragile as you think. I know. That's what terrifies me. His hand lifted, fingers brushing my cheek with devastating gentleness. You're strong and brave and so goddamn beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes. And I want you in ways that have nothing to do with Noah's medical care and everything to do with the fact that you're the first person since Sophia who's made me feel alive instead of just surviving. My breath caught. Vincent, this is complicated. I know. I'm not asking for anything. Just needed you to know that keeping you here isn't entirely selfless. He started to pull away, but I caught his wrist. What if I want complicated? The words hung between us. An admission I hadn't meant to make but couldn't take back. His eyes darkened, searching my face for certainty he wouldn't find, because I wasn't certain of anything, except that when he looked at me like that, every rational thought evaporated. Rachel. My name was a warning and a question. Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that immediately ignited into something desperate and consuming. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as I gasped against his mouth. Every touch felt electric, charged with weeks of denied attraction finally given permission to exist. We broke apart breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. We should stop, he said without conviction. Probably. I kissed him again anyway. And this time, he didn't suggest stopping. What happened next was inevitable. Two people who'd been orbiting each other with increasing gravity finally colliding. He was gentle and intense simultaneously, taking his time despite the urgency thrumming through both of us. When it was over, we lay tangled together on my bed, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. I don't do this, I said quietly. Sleep with men I barely know. You know me better than most people who've been in my life for years. He pressed a kiss to my temple. And for what it's worth, I don't do this either. Haven't been with anyone since Sophia. The confession made something in my chest tighten. Vincent, stay. Not a command this time, but a plea. Past the 2 weeks. Stay as long as you want. I should have said no. Should have recognized this for the dangerous entanglement it was. Instead, I nodded against his shoulder, sealing a decision that would change everything. The morning brought harsh reality. I woke to find Vincent's side of the bed empty, though the sheets still held his warmth. Voices drifted from downstairs, tense and urgent. I dressed quickly and found him in his study with Luca. Both men bent over a laptop displaying surveillance photos. Photos of me. With Noah at a pediatric clinic I'd insisted on visiting 3 days ago for a routine wellness check. The images captured me holding the baby, laughing at something he'd done, looking every bit like a mother with her child rather than a temporary employee. When were these taken? I asked from the doorway. Both men looked up, guilt flashing across Vincent's face. 2 days ago. We just received them this morning through intelligence channels. Who took them? Albanian surveillance team. Luca's tone was grim. They've identified you as someone connected to Vincent, possibly significant to him. They're investigating your background now. Ice flooded my veins. How much danger am I in? Vincent stood, crossing to me with purpose. None. You're under my protection, on my property. They can't touch you here, but they know about me now. They'll use me to get to you. Let them try. His voice carried absolute certainty. I have resources they can't imagine. You're safe, Rachel. I promise. Luca cleared his throat. Boss, with respect, the smart move is to cut ties. Pay her out. Relocate her somewhere they won't look. Erase the connection before it becomes a liability. No. The word came out hard, brooking no argument. She stays. Vincent, this is exactly what we warned. I said no, Luca. Find another solution. The older man sighed but nodded, gathering his materials and leaving us alone. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the room's warmth. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should go before this gets worse. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter if staying here puts me in danger. Then let me protect you properly. He moved closer, hands gentle on my shoulders. Tonight, I'm hosting dinner with my captains, the men who run operations under my oversight. I want you there. Want them to see you're part of my household, under my protection officially. It sends a message to anyone watching that you're mine, and anyone who touches you answers to me and everyone loyal to me. You're using me as a chess piece. I'm claiming you publicly, so my enemies understand the consequences of threatening you. His jaw tightened. Yes, it's strategic, but it's also true. You are mine, Rachel, if you'll let yourself be. Last night wasn't casual for me. Was it for you? The question hung heavy. I could lie. Could pretend it meant nothing, and use that as an excuse to leave. Or I could admit the truth that had been growing since that first night reading together. Maybe even since the airplane when I'd seen him hold his son with such desperate love. No, it wasn't casual. Relief flooded his expression. Then trust me to keep you safe. Come to dinner tonight. Stand beside me. Let me show them you matter. Against every instinct screaming warnings. I agreed. The dinner was held in a formal dining room I hadn't seen before, all dark wood and crystal chandeliers. 5 men arrived precisely at 8, each greeting Vincent with respect that bordered on deference. They ranged in age from mid-30s to early 60s, all dressed in expensive suits, all carrying themselves with the same dangerous confidence as Vincent. He introduced me simply as Noah's doctor, who'd become essential to the household. The phrasing was careful, acknowledging my presence without defining our relationship explicitly. But the way his hand rested at the small of my back, the way he kept me beside him throughout the evening, spoke louder than words. We ate courses I couldn't taste, my stomach too tight with tension. Conversation flowed in English and Italian. Discussions of business territories and shipment schedules and political considerations. I understood enough to recognize I was witnessing the machinery of organized crime operating openly, unbothered by my presence because Vincent had vouched for my discretion. When the meal finally ended and the men departed with respectful nods, I rounded on Vincent in the empty dining room. You paraded me in front of them like property, like I'm some acquisition you're showing off. I presented you as someone under my protection. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I stood, it felt like you were marking territory. His eyes flashed. You want honesty? Fine. Yes, I was marking territory. Letting every person in my organization know that you're off limits, that harming you means declaring war on me personally. That's how this world works, Rachel. I don't get to protect people I care about with restraining orders and police reports. I do it with power and fear, and making absolutely certain no one misunderstands the consequences of crossing me. And you didn't think to ask how I felt about being turned into a symbol? Would you rather I kept you hidden while my enemies circle closer? Let them think you're unprotected, unimportant, easy prey? He moved closer, frustration radiating off him. I'm trying to keep you alive. By making me a target. You became a target the moment you helped Noah on that plane. The admission burst out of him. The moment you showed me kindness, showed interest in my son, you painted a mark on yourself that I can't erase. The only choice left is whether to protect you or abandon you. I'm not capable of the latter. The raw emotion in his voice deflated my anger. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. And I'm sorry. But I'm also not sorry because having you here in my life has given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Connection. The possibility of being something more than just Noah's father and the Castrovani heir. My resolve crumbled. This is insane. We barely know each other. I know you take your coffee with too much cream and read medical journals like novels. I know you sing to Noah when you think no one's listening, and that you cry during those commercials with shelter dogs. I know you're terrified of thunder but won't admit it, and that you'd throw yourself in front of a bullet for someone you just met if you thought it would save them. I know everything that matters, Rachel. He was right. Somehow in these compressed weeks, we'd learned each other in ways that usually took months. The intensity of the situation, the forced proximity, the shared purpose of caring for Noah, it had accelerated everything into something that felt both brand new and ancient. So what now? I asked quietly. Now you decide. Stay and let me protect you the only way I know how. Or leave, and I'll do my best to erase every connection between us so you can go back to being invisible to my enemies. His hand cupped my face. But understand that if you stay, you're choosing this world, choosing me, and I don't let go of things that matter. I should have chosen safety, should have walked away from this dangerous, complicated, utterly insane situation. Instead, I kissed him, pouring every conflicted emotion into the contact, and felt him respond with equal desperation. When we finally broke apart, the decision was made without words. I was staying. God help me. I was staying. The attack came at 4:23 in the morning, tearing me from sleep with the sound of shattering glass and shouting voices. I bolted upright, disoriented, my first coherent thought screaming Noah's name. The security alarm wailed through the mansion, a piercing shriek that set every nerve on fire. I threw off the covers and ran for the hallway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. The house was chaos, shadows moving with violent purpose, the crack of gunfire echoing from somewhere below. Vincent's men were engaging the intruders, but how many had gotten through? How close were they to Noah? The nursery door stood open ahead of me, spilling yellow light into the darkened corridor. My heart seized. I'd closed that door myself when I'd checked on Noah 2 hours ago after his midnight feeding. Someone had opened it. I burst through the doorway and froze. 3 men in dark tactical gear surrounded Noah's crib, one reaching for the screaming baby. They turned at my entrance, weapons rising, and time seemed to slow to a crawl. I had maybe 2 seconds before they decided whether I was a threat worth eliminating. Don't touch him. My voice came out stronger than I felt, fueled by pure maternal instinct for a child that wasn't even mine. He's just a baby. He has nothing to do with whatever war you're fighting. The tallest one, clearly the leader, studied me with cold calculation. You're the doctor, the one Castrovani brought into his house. I'm a pediatrician treating an infant, that's all. You're lying. He moved toward me, weapon lowered but ready. We've been watching. You're more than hired help. He looks at you like you matter. Behind him, Noah's cries had reached a fever pitch, his little face red with terror and confusion. Every instinct screamed at me to grab him, shield him, but these men had guns, and I had nothing except the slim hope that I could buy time for Vincent's security to reach this floor. Fine. I matter to him. So take me instead. The words tumbled out before I could second-guess them. I'm worth more as a hostage than a 9-month-old baby who can't be controlled, can't be threatened, can't give you anything except screaming and diapers. Think strategically. Which bargaining chip has more value? The leader's eyes narrowed, considering. Gunfire erupted closer now, just down the hallway. His team was running out of time. Grab her, he ordered in accented English. Leave the kid. Rough hands seized my arms, zip ties cutting into my wrists as they bound them behind my back. I caught one last glimpse of Noah in his crib, terrified but unharmed, before they dragged me toward the window they'd entered through. A rope dangled from the frame, their extraction route. Below, engines roared to life. Vincent! I screamed his name with everything I had, hoping he could hear me somewhere in this massive house, hoping he'd know what happened. Vincent! Noah's safe. A hand clamped over my mouth, cutting off the words. They hauled me through the window, and my bare feet scraped against the exterior wall as we rappelled down too fast, controlled chaos that ended with me being thrown into the back of a waiting van. The doors slammed shut, engine accelerating before I could even think about escape. Through the small rear window, I watched Vincent's mansion recede into the distance, lights blazing, security swarming like disturbed ants. I'd lived there barely 2 weeks. Now I might never see it again. The warehouse they brought me to smelled like rust and stale water, somewhere near the docks based on the distant sound of ship horns. They zip-tied my ankles to a metal chair in what had once been an office, the furniture pushed against walls to create an empty interrogation space. 5 men rotated guard duty, speaking to each other in rapid Albanian that I couldn't understand but could read the tone of. Confident. Victorious. They'd gotten exactly what they wanted. Hours crawled past. No food. Minimal water. Questions I refused to answer about Vincent's operations, his security protocols, his weaknesses. When I stayed silent, they didn't beat me, didn't torture me physically. Instead, they described in graphic detail what would happen to me if Vincent didn't comply with their demands. The psychological warfare was almost worse than physical pain. $50 million. The leader, who I'd learned was named Drayton, said during one of his visits to my cell, plus complete withdrawal from 3 territories in Boston. That's what Castrovani's woman costs. I'm not his woman. I'm a doctor who helped his sick child. You live in his house, sleep in his bed, care for his son like he's yours. Drayton leaned closer, and I caught the sour smell of his breath. He'll pay. Men like Castrovani always pay when it's personal. I noticed his hand trembling as he gripped the chair back, the slight sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the warehouse's chill. Medical training kicked in automatically, cataloging symptoms. Tremor, excessive sweating, the fruity smell beneath the general staleness of his breath. Classic signs of uncontrolled diabetes, probably type 2 based on his age and build. How long since you've checked your blood sugar? The question came out before I could stop it. His eyes narrowed. What? You're diabetic. I can see it. The tremor in your hands, the sweating, the way you're breathing. When did you last eat? Take your medication. That's none of your concern. It is if you pass out from hypoglycemia and your men think I did something to you. They'd kill me before asking questions. I shifted in the chair, wrists aching from the zip ties. Or you could let me help. I'm a doctor, remember? I can assess your condition, tell you what you need. Keep you functional while you wait for your ransom. Drayton studied me for a long moment, suspicion warring with the pragmatic recognition that I was right. If he collapsed, his operation lost its leader at a critical moment. Why would you help me? Because I help sick people. It's what I do. And because if you're healthy and thinking clearly, you're more likely to make rational decisions about keeping me alive. He gestured to one of his men, speaking in Albanian. The man disappeared, returning minutes later with a basic first aid kit that included a cheap glucose meter. Drayton sat heavily in a chair across from me. Fine. But if you try anything, I'll kill you slowly. They cut the zip ties on my wrists long enough for me to prick his finger and check his reading. Dangerously high at 340. I explained in simple terms what it meant, what he needed to do. He had insulin in a cooler somewhere, poorly stored, but better than nothing. I calculated dosage based on his weight and current reading, watching as he administered it himself, not trusting me with a needle. You should test 3 times daily minimum, I said as they retied my wrists, looser this time. Adjust your insulin accordingly, and eat regularly. Stress spikes blood sugar, and you're clearly under stress. Because of your boyfriend starting a war over you. But there was something almost respectful in his tone now. You're strange, Dr. Foster. Helping your captor. You're a patient who needs medical care. The circumstances don't change that. Over the next 30 hours, they gave me slightly better conditions. Real meals instead of stale bread. A bathroom break every 6 hours. Permission to move around the office within limits. I used the freedom to observe everything. Guard rotations, weapons storage, the layout of the warehouse. Drayton checked his blood sugar religiously now, even consulting me about readings and adjustments. I also listened. Their Albanian conversations were still incomprehensible, but I caught repeated words that sounded like names, numbers that might be times or coordinates. And once, when they thought I was sleeping, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A conversation in broken English with someone on speakerphone. Killer after? One of Drayton's men asked. Of course, came the response. Make it look like Castrovani's rescue attempt failed. He gets emotional, makes mistakes. That's when we finish him. They never intended to let me go. The ransom was a trap. Bait to lure Vincent into making exactly the kind of desperate move that would get him killed. And there was nothing I could do to warn him except hope that he was smart enough, careful enough, to see through their plan. On the second night, Drayton came to check on me personally. "Your man is gathering an army," he said, almost conversational. 5 families pledging support. It's impressive. Also futile. "Then why do you look worried?" His jaw tightened. "I'm not worried." "Yes, you are. Your blood sugar just spiked again. I can see it in your face." Fight or flight response. I leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed. Vincent isn't just some boss you can eliminate and walk away from. He has allies, resources, and absolutely nothing to lose when it comes to people he cares about. You took the wrong hostage, Drayton. You should have left me alone. Too late for regrets now. He stood, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. Tomorrow ends this, one way or another. After he left, I sat in the darkness listening to distant sirens and my own racing heartbeat. Somewhere out there, Vincent was planning my rescue. And I had to find a way to survive long enough for him to execute it. Had to believe that the man I'd fallen for despite every rational objection was capable of beating odds that seemed impossible. Because the alternative, that I'd die in this warehouse without seeing him or Noah again, was something I couldn't let myself consider. Not yet. Not while I still had breath and hope and the stubborn determination that had gotten me through medical school, through my parents' death, through every impossible challenge life had thrown at me. I just had to hold on a little longer. The explosion of sound pulled me from fitful half-sleep. Not gunfire this time, but something bigger, more organized. Shouting in multiple languages, vehicles screeching, and then the unmistakable percussion of flashbangs detonating in rapid succession. The warehouse erupted into chaos. My guards scattered, weapons drawn, yelling commands I couldn't understand. Through the office's grimy window, I saw muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like deadly fireflies. This wasn't another Albanian patrol. This was an assault, coordinated and overwhelming. Vincent had come for me. "Get down!" I dropped to the floor as bullets punched through the thin walls, showering me with splinters and dust. The zip ties on my ankles had been left relatively loose after days of compliance. I worked them frantically, ignoring the burn as plastic cut into skin, focusing only on getting free. Outside the office, the firefight intensified. I recognized the tactical precision even through the chaos, the way Vincent's forces moved with purpose rather than panic. They were clearing the warehouse systematically, room by room, closing in on the center where Drayton had kept me isolated. A body hit the floor outside my door. Then another. The handle turned, and I pressed myself against the wall, grabbing the only weapon available, a rusted metal pipe from the corner that had once been part of the building's plumbing. The door crashed open. A man stumbled in, young, maybe 20, clutching his side where blood seeped through his tactical vest. Albanian, based on the patches. He saw me and raised his weapon with shaking hands. "Don't." I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You're bleeding badly. That vest didn't stop the bullet, just slowed it. You need medical attention or you'll be dead in 20 minutes. His eyes widened, pain and fear mixing with confusion. "You're the doctor." "I am. And I can help you if you put down the gun." For a suspended moment, we stared at each other across the small space, both of us trapped by circumstances beyond our control. Then his legs gave out, the weapon clattering from his grip as he collapsed. I moved without thinking, grabbing supplies from the first aid kit Drayton had left behind, pressing gauze against the wound to slow the bleeding. "Pressure here?" I guided his hand to hold the gauze. "Keep it tight. When your people find you, tell them you need a hospital immediately." "Why help me?" Blood flecked his lips. "After what we did? Because I'm a doctor before I'm anything else." The door exploded inward, and suddenly Vincent was there, weapon raised, eyes wild with something between fury and terror. He scanned the room in a heartbeat, taking in me kneeling beside the wounded Albanian, blood on my hands but clearly unharmed. Our eyes met, and the weapon lowered. Rachel. My name came out choked, raw with emotion I'd never heard from him before. I'm okay. I'm okay. I stood on trembling legs, and he crossed the space in 2 strides, pulling me against him with enough force to steal my breath. His hands moved over me frantically, checking for injuries, confirming I was real and whole. We need to move. Luca appeared in the doorway, tactical vest covered in dust, weapon still smoking. Buildings clear, but reinforcements could arrive any moment. Vincent nodded but didn't release me, keeping one arm locked around my waist as we navigated through the warehouse. Bodies littered the floor, both Albanian and some of Vincent's men. The cost of my rescue painted in blood and spent shells. Guilt churned in my stomach, but there wasn't time to process it. The extraction was military precise. Vincent's forces had brought 4 SUVs, positioned for rapid departure. He pushed me into the back of the lead vehicle, sliding in beside me, never breaking physical contact. As we pulled away from the warehouse, I watched smoke rising from the building. Emergency lights approaching in the distance. Drayton? I asked quietly. Dead, along with most of his command structure. Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless in that way that meant he was holding back something enormous. The Albanians will regroup, but they've lost their leadership and credibility. It'll take them months to recover, if they ever do. Back at the mansion, dawn was breaking over the manicured grounds. Staff moved efficiently, treating wounded men, securing the perimeter, restoring order to the controlled chaos. Vincent led me straight upstairs, bypassing everyone who tried to speak to him. Noah was asleep in his crib, watched over by 2 armed guards Vincent had left behind. The baby looked peaceful, oblivious to the violence executed in my name. I sank into the chair beside the crib, suddenly unable to stand, adrenaline crash hitting me like a physical blow. He's been asking for you. Vincent crouched beside my chair. Well, in his way, kept pointing at your room, saying rah-rah, which I think means Rachel. Tears I'd been holding for 40 hours finally broke free. Vincent pulled me from the chair into his lap, holding me while I shook with silent sobs, stroking my hair with surprising gentleness. You're safe now. I've got you. That man I was helping when you found me. Is he alive? Probably. We left the non-critical wounded for the authorities to find. He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. Why were you treating him? Because he was bleeding and I could help. Because that's what I do, Vincent. Even when it doesn't make tactical sense. I wiped at my face. They were going to kill me regardless of the ransom. I heard them planning it. His jaw clenched, muscles jumping beneath the skin. I know. We intercepted their communications. That's why the rescue couldn't wait. Why I called in every favor, mobilized 5 families worth of resources. You think I'd let them take you from me? 5 families. How much will that cost you? Everything. Nothing. I don't care. He cupped my face in both hands. You were worth it, Rachel. You'll always be worth it. The next 3 days existed in a fog. I slept fitfully, waking from nightmares of zip ties and warehouses and the cold certainty of death. Vincent stayed with me constantly, abandoning meetings and responsibilities to sit beside the bed, holding my hand through the worst of it. When I finally managed to eat something, he was there. When I cried without warning, he was there. When I needed silence, he provided it without question. Noah became my anchor to normalcy. Caring for him, maintaining his routine, gave me purpose beyond just surviving. On the 4th morning, I woke to find Vincent in the nursery, Noah on his hip, both of them watching me from the doorway. He missed you, Vincent said softly. We both did. I took Noah, pressing my face into his baby-soft hair, breathing in his innocent scent. He patted my cheeks with chubby hands, babbling his version of my name, and something in my chest eased slightly. Luca arrived that afternoon, his expression grim. Vincent met with him in the study, but left the door open, no longer hiding anything from me. I stood in the hallway, listening despite knowing I wouldn't like what I heard. The Albanians are regrouping faster than anticipated, Luca said. New leadership, more violent than Drayton. They're calling the rescue a declaration of war, demanding blood for blood. And Rachel is their primary target now. Silence stretched. Then Vincent's voice, hollow with resignation. She needs to disappear. New identity. Relocation to the West Coast under protected witness protocols. It's the only way to keep her alive long term. Already making arrangements. We can have her moved within 72 hours. I walked into the study, both men turning to face me. No. Vincent stood slowly. Rachel, this isn't negotiable. They'll come for you again, and next time I might not get there in time. I said no. I didn't survive a kidnapping to be exiled from the life I chose. I moved closer, refusing to be intimidated by his presence or Luca's disapproval. I'm staying, Vincent. Here, with you and Noah. That's my decision. It's suicide. Then protect me better. Isn't that what you do? Control situations, eliminate threats, keep what's yours safe. I grabbed his shirt, pulling him down to my level. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Despite everything. Don't take that choice away from me. His forehead dropped against mine, breath shuddering out. I can't lose you. Then don't let me go. Luca presented the solution 2 days after I refused to leave. He arrived with a leather portfolio, spreading documents across Vincent's desk like a battle plan. Which I supposed it was. Marriage, he said without preamble. Official, legal, witnessed by representatives from all 5 allied families. Under our code, attacking a boss's wife is equivalent to declaring total war. The Albanians don't have the resources or alliances to survive that. Vincent looked at me, something unreadable in his dark eyes. It would work. Better than any security detail. Better than hiding you. They'd have to back down or face annihilation from every family on the East Coast. You want to marry me for strategic protection. My voice came out flat, processing the proposal without the emotion it deserved. I want to marry you because I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. He moved closer, ignoring Luca's presence entirely. The strategy is convenient. The reason is that I'm in love with you, Rachel. Have been since you calmed Noah on that plane. Maybe before I even knew your name. The declaration should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt weighted with necessity. A confession forced by circumstances rather than choice. And if there was another way to protect me, would you still want this? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. But there isn't another way, and I'm selfish enough to use that fact to keep you. I looked at Luca, who was studiously examining the documents as if not hearing every word. How quickly can this happen? 72 hours if we expedite. City Hall ceremony, minimal witnesses, maximum legal standing. He glanced up. It won't be romantic, Dr. Foster, but it will be binding. Fine. The word came out before I could overthink it. Let's do it. Vincent's relief was palpable, though he masked it quickly. You're sure? No, but I'm choosing this anyway. I touched his face, feeling the slight stubble he hadn't bothered shaving. I'm choosing you, Vincent. Even though it's insane and strategic and wrapped in violence. I'm choosing this life. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I let myself believe that maybe strategy and love could coexist in the same decision. The ceremony happened on a gray Wednesday morning at City Hall. I wore a simple cream-colored dress that one of Vincent's staff had procured. Elegant but forgettable. Vincent looked devastating in a dark suit. His face composed, but his hand trembling slightly, as he slid the platinum band onto my finger. 2 witnesses from the Castrovani organization stood behind us, plus representatives from 4 other families whose names I didn't know, but whose presence made the marriage politically significant. I do, I said when asked, and meant it despite the circumstances. I do, Vincent echoed, and I heard both the strategy and the truth in his voice. The officiant pronounced us married in less than 15 minutes. No music, no flowers, no celebration beyond a brief reception at the mansion where serious men in expensive suits congratulated Vincent on securing such a valuable alliance. I smiled and accepted their well wishes, feeling like a chess piece that had just been promoted to queen. That night, Vincent came to my room, our room now, and held me without demanding anything more. I know this isn't how you imagined getting married, he said quietly. I stopped imagining a long time ago. I curled into his warmth. This is real enough. The first week as Mrs. Castrovani was surreal. Nothing changed, and everything changed simultaneously. I still cared for Noah, still maintained his routines, but now wore a wedding ring that caught light and reminded me of vows made under duress and desire combined. Vincent worked constantly, managing the fallout from the warehouse assault, coordinating with his allies, preparing for Albanian retaliation everyone knew was coming. We were polite strangers sharing space, bound by legal documents and survival instinct, but emotionally disconnected. The trauma of my kidnapping sat between us like a physical barrier. He didn't push, didn't demand the intimacy marriage supposedly granted. We orbited each other carefully, Noah the only bridge we could cross reliably. On day 8, I found Vincent in the nursery at 3 a.m., holding a sleeping Noah, staring at nothing with exhausted eyes. "Can't sleep?" I asked from the doorway. "Worried about you, about him, about whether I made the right choice dragging you deeper into this instead of forcing you to leave." He looked at me finally. "You could still go, Rachel. Marriage can be annulled. I'd survive the political fallout. I'm not going anywhere." I crossed to them, running my hand over Noah's soft hair. "Stop trying to save me from choices I'm making with full knowledge of consequences. You deserve better than this. Better than me. I deserve to decide that for myself." I kissed his temple. "Come to bed, Vincent. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to be married. Tonight, just sleep." He followed me, still carrying Noah, and we all three fell asleep in the oversized bed, a family assembled from chaos and choice. The attack came on day 10, just when I'd started believing maybe we'd have time to breathe. Vincent had insisted on taking me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant he'd frequented for years. Neutral territory where we could pretend to be a normal couple celebrating a hasty marriage. We were walking from the car when Vincent stopped abruptly, his hand tightening painfully on mine. "Get back to the vehicle. Now." "What? Rachel, move!" He was already pushing me back toward where our driver waited, his other hand reaching for the weapon I knew he kept concealed. "Luca, clear the street." I saw it then, what his trained eye had caught immediately. A car parked at an odd angle, driver's side window slightly down despite the cold evening. Something wrong about the shadows inside. 3 seconds? Maybe 4. That's all the warning we had. The explosion tore through the restaurant's facade with a roar that deafened me instantly. Vincent tackled me to the ground, his body covering mine completely as debris rained down around us. Glass, brick, burning pieces of what had been a building moments ago. Heat washed over us, and I couldn't breathe. Couldn't hear anything except high-pitched ringing. When the fallout settled, Vincent pulled me up, checking me frantically for injuries. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye, and his suit was shredded, but his hands were steady as they moved over me. "Are you hurt?" "Rachel, answer me." "I'm okay. I'm okay." My ears were ringing, vision blurry, but nothing felt broken. "Vincent, your head." "Doesn't matter." He was already moving, pulling me toward the SUV as his security swarmed around us, weapons drawn, scanning for secondary threats. "We're leaving. Now." The drive back to the mansion was a blur. Luca appeared from somewhere, barking orders into his phone in rapid Italian. Vincent held me against his side, blood from his head wound dripping onto my dress, neither of us caring about anything except that we'd survived. The next 48 hours were brutal. Vincent authorized a response so comprehensive it bordered on warfare. I heard pieces of it from my position in Noah's nursery, where I'd retreated to feel useful while Vincent orchestrated destruction. Names I didn't recognize. Locations across the city. Confirmations of eliminations delivered in code but unmistakable. When Luca finally gave the all-clear, his face was grim, but satisfied. "It's done. Albanian leadership is gone. Cells are scattered, leaderless, ineffective. They'll retreat to their original territories or dissolve entirely." Vincent looked like he'd aged a decade in 2 days. "Confirmed kills? 13 key targets. The rest fled the region. No one's claiming the Castrovani name anymore." The message was received. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow, knowing that 13 people were dead because someone had tried to kill me. Kill us. And Vincent had responded with the only language his world understood. Absolute, overwhelming force. That night he came to bed and broke down. Not crying, not theatrically, just quiet admission of how close he'd come to losing me, losing everything. I held him while he confessed every fear he'd been carrying since the warehouse, since the airplane, since Sophia's death, and I confessed my own. The nightmares that still woke me, the constant waiting for the next attack, the guilt of surviving when others didn't. We're broken, I whispered against his shoulder. Both of us, trying to build something real out of survival and strategy. Then we'll be broken together. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes, and maybe that's enough. Maybe we don't need perfect, Rachel. Just real. I kissed him, and this time it felt different. Not desperate or strategic, but honest. Two damaged people choosing each other despite and because of everything that had tried to destroy us. The war was over. The marriage was real. And whatever came next, we'd face it together. 3 weeks of peace felt surreal after months of violence. The mansion had returned to its quiet efficiency. Guards still present, but tension replaced by routine. Vincent attended meetings without the urgency of warfare. I cared for Noah without jumping at every unexpected sound. We were healing, slowly, like broken bones knitting back together with time and careful attention. But we were also avoiding the conversation we needed to have. It came to a head on a Sunday morning. Noah was napping, the house unusually quiet, and I found Vincent in his study staring at paperwork he wasn't actually reading. I knocked on the open door frame. "We need to talk." He looked up, resignation in his dark eyes. "I know." I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd negotiated my original 2-week employment. So much had changed since that conversation. "Tell me the truth, Vincent. All of it. When did you decide you wanted me here permanently?" He leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "The night on the airplane. When you calmed Noah with such easy competence and refused my money like it meant nothing. I watched you disappear into that terminal and knew I'd find you again." He paused. "Hiring you was strategic from the beginning. I needed you close where I could control the situation, protect you from threats you didn't even know existed. The medical care for Noah was real, but it was also an excuse. The admission should have angered me. Instead, I felt oddly relieved to finally hear him acknowledge what I'd suspected. And when did it stop being just strategy? It never was just strategy. His voice dropped. Maybe for the first few days I convinced myself it was practical, keeping you safe while benefiting Noah. But watching you with him, seeing how you treated my staff with respect, how you asked about my day like my answer mattered. Somewhere in there I stopped pretending this was about security protocols. I stood, moving to look out his window at the grounds where Noah would eventually play when he was older. I knew, maybe not consciously at first, but I knew you were manipulating the situation, keeping me here through money and necessity and carefully constructed circumstances. "Rachel, let me finish." I turned to face him. I knew, and I stayed anyway. Not because I was naive or trapped, but because I wanted to. Because a baby cried on an airplane, and his father looked at me with such desperate hope that something in me recognized something in you. We were both survivors trying to figure out how to live instead of just exist. He crossed to me, stopping close enough that I could see the faint scar from the restaurant explosion healing above his eyebrow. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but I'm here anyway." I touched his face gently. "We can't build a real marriage on strategy and survival, Vincent. We need something more honest than that. Then let's be honest." He caught my hand, pressing it against his chest where I could feel his heart beating steady and strong. "I love you, Rachel. Not because you're useful, or because marrying you was politically advantageous, but because you make me remember what it feels like to want a future instead of just protecting the present. You challenge me, frustrate me, force me to be better than I am. And I want to spend whatever time I have left becoming the man you deserve." Tears pricked my eyes. "I love you too, even though you're impossible and dangerous and you run a criminal empire. I love you because you're trying to be a good father despite having no example to follow. Because you read poetry when you think no one's watching, and you cry during sad movies, but pretend you don't. Because you saw me at my most ordinary and somehow decided I was worth turning your entire world upside down for. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and it felt different than every kiss before. This wasn't desperation or strategy. This was promise. Commitment, chosen freely with full knowledge of what it meant. When we finally broke apart, Vincent held my gaze. I want to do this right. Build something real with you. That means including you in decisions about Noah, about our future, about everything that matters. And it means boundaries, I countered. I don't want to know details about your business, Vincent. I've accepted what you are, what you do, but I can't be complicit in it. I need to maintain who I am separate from your world. Fair enough. You keep your identity, your work, your boundaries. I'll protect you while respecting them. He paused. Speaking of your work, Luca's arranged security protocols for you to return to Boston General part-time. Discreet, but effective, if you want to go back. The offer meant more than he probably realized. Yes, I need that. Need to remember I'm a doctor first, everything else second. I know, that's who you are. I wouldn't want to change it. We spent the afternoon together with Noah, the three of us in the nursery where this had all really begun. Vincent asked my opinion about schools, about when to introduce solid foods beyond the hypoallergenic formula, about 100 small decisions that added up to building a life. And I realized this was what marriage actually meant. Not grand gestures or strategic alliances, but daily choices to include each other, respect each other, build something together despite and because of our differences. That evening, Luca came by with updated security schedules for my hospital shifts. 2 men, rotating, always within visual range but never obvious. They'll pose as other hospital staff, blend in completely. You won't even notice them after a while. Thank you, I said, meaning it. This was the compromise that let me keep both worlds. The protection that let me maintain my identity while acknowledging the realities of who I'd married. The weeks that followed established new rhythms. I worked at Boston General 3 days a week, treating patients who had no idea their pediatrician went home to a mansion with armed guards. Vincent attended to his business, whatever that entailed, but came home for dinner every night. We read together in the evenings, talked about everything from politics to literature to Noah's developmental milestones. Slowly, carefully, we built the foundation of something real. Noah's first birthday arrived on a crisp October afternoon. We kept the celebration small, just Vincent, me, Noah, and a few key members of Vincent's inner circle who'd become something like family. The cake was chocolate, Noah's favorite based on the few tastes we'd given him. He demolished it with enthusiastic glee, getting frosting everywhere while we laughed and took pictures like any normal family would. Later, after Noah was in bed and our guests had departed, Vincent found me in the garden. The same garden where I'd first truly understood the danger I was stepping into. Where armed men had intercepted an attack. Where everything had started tilting from employment into something more. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "That flight from Chicago. How terrified you looked. How desperate. How I had no idea that helping a crying baby would lead to all of this." I leaned back against his warmth. It wasn't a fairy tale, Vincent. No magical transformation or perfect romance. Just 2 broken people deciding to be broken together. Regrets? I turned in his arms, meeting those dark eyes that had first captured my attention with their intensity. Not a single one. This life, this choice, you and Noah, I'd do it all again exactly the same way. Even the kidnapping, the explosions, the strategic marriage, even those, because they led here, to this moment, to us being honest about what we are and what we're building. I kissed him softly. I love you, Vincent Castrovani, not despite who you are, but including all of it. I love you, Rachel Castrovani. He said my married name with such reverence it made my chest tight. Thank you for choosing this, for choosing me. We stood there in the garden as evening fell. 2 people who'd found each other through chaos and decided to build something lasting from the wreckage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new moments where we'd have to actively choose each other over easier paths. But tonight, we had this. Honest love, hard-won trust, and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The baby who'd cried on Flight 2847 was sleeping peacefully upstairs, healthy and loved. The terrified father from that flight had become my husband, my partner, my choice. And the exhausted pediatrician who'd just wanted to help had found something she hadn't known she was searching for. A family assembled from impossible circumstances and unconventional love. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough for me.